Time to Think is back up and running. Chris, you had a backup.
Oh, didn't know you're going to transition that. Well done. Well done. Yeah, so something happened yesterday in my home.
Was it devastating?
Is it
traumatic?
It was
Do you want to relive it?
The grossest thing I've probably ever done in my life.
So I didn't know that one. Tell me more.
So here's how physics works. You know what a siphon is, Josh?
Oh, no. Yes, I do know what a siphon is.
A siphon is where you create a back vacuum on something so that liquid flows in one particular direction, may no longer flow in that direction, and instead comes backward. Well, what occurred yesterday was a moment in the Tillman family history to be remembered because we got home from church, and I typically come home later because I'm hanging around with people afterwards and closing up shop and everything, and I came home. And we're eating lunch. Rosalie got Wendy's for us, and Wendy's fresh. It's the poor man's Culver's.
Thanks,
really.
Mom.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're eating this, and then I hear from downstairs, "Oh no!"
Oh no! No one's ever said "oh no," and it's been good.
See, and it's usually me who says that. I mean, Rosalie's not an overreactor at all. I am the overreactor 10 times over. So I'm like, what? And she's just like, "Oh no!" And I'm like, I think I even said, "Use your words." Tell me what's happened, what's going on. And I'm upstairs and I'm in the living room and eating with the kids and everything. It's like, "Oh no!" So I go downstairs, and I see.
And you said, "Oh no!"
Oh no! Yeah, there was sewage, and by sewage I mean sewage. I don't mean gray water. I mean sewage that had backed up into our whole gym area downstairs. So our gym area has we have bookshelves that have a lot of our kids, school books, and because we effectively homeschool our kids, we've got probably 5 bookcases just loaded with books, and books because we have 6 kids that are all over the floor, along with other things. We have carpeted area that we have all our gym equipment and stuff, our rower, our treadmill, our weights, all that business, and the sewage had backed up. Apparently what had happened was in our basement, our littlest kids, one of their bedrooms is down there, and so their bathroom, the toilet, had come half off of the line, the waste outlet. And so the water would somewhat flush, but basically every time they flushed and then plunged that toilet, what they were doing was creating a siphon. And so the sewage that was in the system there would suck up back, because this is the last point in the system effectively, and it's the end of the line, the lowest point.
Oh, I can smell this.
So yeah, the floor. I
hope you too can, our listeners. This is for you.
The floor drain right by our mechanicals, our water heater, our furnace, and so forth. Well, all kinds of solid material came up through that floor drain, and it went all over, and so we ended up having to throw out all of the flooring that was in our gym area, all the flooring in the hallway going to our son's room, and I'll have to cut out some drywall and replace so we don't get mold problems. So we're going to have to throw out all of our bookcases, and all the books are going to have to go back on something now. So it was a massive disaster yesterday. It was
You came in today pretty chipper for a guy that dealt with all that yesterday.
Yeah, so one of the reasons is because I watched Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man last night. Watched that with some good friends at church, and I had probably about 1 hour intermittently where I was quite upset.
Yeah.
And then there was a moment where I was using a mop to wipe up all of these dried solids off of the floor, where I just started laughing. and my wife heard me from the other room. And I told her, I said, I think I've progressed through the stages of grief, and now I am at the spot where I can just laugh about this. So praise the Lord, here we are.
Oh, well, we hope that your day's going better than that. If you're listening to A Time to Think.
There's a high likelihood it is. On the bell curve, we're on the very left side on the good day spectrum.
So we're going to knock out a quick podcast here so Chris can go buy some new floors.
I do need to buy some new flooring, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that misery with us.
Yeah,
so that
wonderful.
We can, think about you. Thoughts and prayers, huh? This is A Time to Think, a podcast that eventually gets to thoughtful and careful
My bathroom was a time to stink yesterday, and the whole basement area, in fact. So
you can still smell it.
Yep.
This podcast, after the introduction, is usually devoted to thoughtful, careful engagement with issues in the culture and the church. Chris and I felt years ago that we lived in a culture of passionate, quick, unthinking opinions. So we wanted to say, how can we have a podcast that is slower to react, sometimes 2 months slower to react when we not forget, but life gets in the way.
Yeah.
But slower, dispassioned, reasoned, careful engagement. So we've been in a short little series here on some isms. We had relativism and subjectivism and individualism. Talked about confirmation bias. Ism last time. And we want to conclude this brief little mini-series with non-confrontational ism. We hinted in the last podcast that our culture is quick to confront in Facebook comments, quick to confront in Twitter quote tweets, quick to confront online, but interpersonally, when there's another real person in the room, pretty slow to confront.
Yep.
And that I think is well established enough that we can move from a theory of non-confrontationalism to the practicalities of it, because I really that's what I want to hit home with is how do we operate in this culture. I think effectively what it leads to, Chris, is when we're face to face with a real person, we have a real problem and a hesitancy with telling another person that's wrong or that's bad.
Right. Yeah.
And some of it is sheepishness, but I think it's more than just personality types. It's baked into a culture that has said there is nothing objectively wrong. And so because there's nothing objectively wrong, Chris has no right to tell Josh that it's wrong. Yeah. And so now we find ourselves talking to people and we think, well, that's actually wrong. But we don't know what foundation on which we would say that. Yeah. We don't know how to approach them when we think, hey, they're doing the wrong thing or they're thinking the wrong thing. And so, Chris, if you could maybe just provide brief reflections on that before we ask some practical questions on how to handle these conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reminded, I think it was a quote from Seinfeld, mid-'90s, where the discussion of homosexuality came up. And, so just to, kind of track with the cultural progression on the issue, it was widely accepted for a very long time that homosexual practice was out of bounds, right? And then sexual revolution occurs in the 1960s and 70s. People start experimenting with things that had previously been, accepted as, hey, you should not do these things. So people start engaging them and thinking, oh, well, I can do this, and so forth. And it stays in the realm of what we would call like the don't ask, don't tell, right? And that was the military policy, about homosexuals serving in the military, don't ask, don't tell. So that went on for quite some time. And going to the mid-'90s, you had Seinfeld, which was on, and there's a phrase that came from that show where they were talking about homosexuality and said, not that there's anything wrong with that, but what was baked into that statement was the assumption that they did think there was something wrong with it, but they don't want to sound like they're being bigoted. Yep. Right. And so, during that time, and those are the years I spent in, middle school, going to high school and everything, in the mid to late 90s, because I'm not as old as you claim that I am.
You're prettier now.
So yeah, why not?
So that progressed from there's nothing wrong with it to now this is right. I mean, it's more right. It's more.
Jerry Seinfeld himself has said that he couldn't make comedy today. Like he does stand-up routines and everything like that, but Seinfeld will never be permitted on the air today in terms of new content. It's held on as legacy content because millions of people watched the show, thought it was hilarious, and it is a really funny show. And it's in part funny because humor was equal opportunity. So everybody get made fun of. I mean, there was an episode where one of the characters had a Jesus fish on his car, and it was like, oh, are you a religious guy? And went through his radio stations, found like, oh, Christian radio stations. As a Christian, I can look at that and laugh. Or even an episode of The Office recently I saw where B.J. Novak's character Ryan Howard, he starts they're at a baptism for Pam and Jim's kid. And he's just taking these shots at religion the whole time where he's like, anybody drink the Kool-Aid, where he's at the reception and everything. And you can laugh at that. You can laugh at yourself. But the culture has shifted so dramatically where the idea of having any type of personal identity even made fun of, let alone, kind of confronted as being right or wrong. It existed in the 90s for a while where you could make fun of it, right? And people could kind of do a live and let live type of mentality. We're well beyond live and let live, and we're certainly well beyond comedy at this point, where it's effectively you will live or let yourself die.
So
That's
do I
basically
hear
how it
you
works.
saying that there's less separation between idea and personhood? That used to be a person that held an idea, and that idea could be made fun of, which even to a degree made fun of the people connected with the idea.
Right.
But really it was the idea being made fun of. And
Yeah.
now you can't make fun of an idea because you're attacking a person if you make fun of the idea.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so there's one, it's hard to even talk
Or
about.
the practice becomes identical with the individual as well. I think that's the other part of this, that because we've ventured in the world of identity, and so sexual practice and everything. People said, this is my gender identity. Well, in the 90s, the idea was, what is your preference? It's a matter of choice. Now it's a matter of identity. So to confront a practice is to confront the individual's humanity, effectively.
Okay, so there's less removal. So if you say that is wrong, that thing you do is wrong, that belief you have is wrong, you are, according to our culture, attacking the person who
Yes.
holds that.
Yes.
And that goes back to the confirmation bias piece. Why would I want to confirm the things that I already believe? Because I need my personhood to not be attacked. I think that, oh man, so we're talking about not being able to tell another person that something is wrong. Non-confrontationalism. I've lost my train of thought, which happens on this podcast from time to time. You mentioned sexuality, but I want to even just get down to what if you have a friend who is looking at a new job and you think that they're looking at it wrongly?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing you could do is say, you're seeing that wrongly.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a really unnatural thing to do, because we've kind of had this social agreement that I won't tell you what you're doing is wrong and you won't tell me
Sure.
what I'm doing is wrong.
Yeah.
And so, here's my train of thought again. We tend to operate in a lot of spheres where we say, well, I wouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So just like there's nothing wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the thought of, well, I wouldn't do that. And effectively what you're saying is, I believe that's wrong, but in a culture that tells me I can't tell you it's wrong, I need to find another way to say that's wrong. And so what I'm going to say is not for me.
Right.
And so there's a guy, I don't agree with all of his tactics, but a guy named Mark Dice who would do some man on the street interviews.
I love Mark Dice.
And he would talk about, he would go up and interview someone about why homosexuality was good. And then he would use their answers to talk about incest.
Mm-hmm.
And there would be a connection. It's like, why is homosexuality good? Because it's two consenting adults.
Mm-hmm.
And he would say, what if I'm going to marry my sister and have relations with my sister? And people would visibly go, oh, gross.
Mm-hmm.
But because of their thought position, they wouldn't say, no, that thing is
Right.
wrong. They would say, it's not for me. And so I think we live in a culture where we find ourselves in conversations, we hear someone else talking, and those are two sexuality examples that are kind of the big stuff, but they happen in parenting decisions, they happen in church decisions, should I stay or should I go now? They happen in job decisions, they happen in
Ethics, just generally.
ethics, they happen in Bible positions. You're in a Bible study and someone says something that's just clearly not in the text, and you go,
Right.
I don't know how to say that's not in that passage
Right.
because I've been told I can't tell you that I'm wrong.
Well, I mean, it's a Bible study question that, I understand the place of it, but quite frankly, it's not one that should probably be asked regularly, which is, what are you taking from this? I don't care what you're, I mean, I understand what you might be taking from it, but I care what it says first. I
Right.
care what it actually says.
Which is why if you're in any Bible studies with Josh Holland, I will say, what do you see?
There you go.
Because if you see something that's not there, then at least we can say, where did you see it?
You're blind.
You
Yeah.
know? Because there is actually a text in front of us, and there are things it says and things it doesn't say. But we're really uncomfortable in even those small conversations with saying, hey, that's actually wrong. How do we operate in a culture where we're not just these big things like being
Right.
able to say that sexual action is wrong, but we just don't know how to tell our friends that, do you want my perspective on why I think that that's wrong?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think part of it, Josh, is we've become a culture where everything is a big thing. Right. So
It's like a time to think. It's a big,
it's a big
deal.
thing. We take issues and we explode them all in terms of their significance. And so we've leveled the playing field of significance on the highest level. Everything's red alert. I mean, you look at, the news cycle. When I was a teenager, Fox News, my parents watched Fox News. If I heard like the ding, it's like the ding, whatever, it's like Fox News alert. I was like, oh man, 9/11. You know, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that would come on. I mean, I remember, getting ready for school and seeing, that kind of, like the Twin Towers collapsing literally. And I'm getting ready for college and Fox News alert.
Yeah.
Well, now watch Fox News in my parents' house. Fox News alert. Dow down by 20 points. Mm-hmm. Fox News alert. Jennifer Garner marries, non-Ben Affleck. I mean, this is the Fox News alert now. And so everything has become a big thing for us because we want to grab attention and we want to believe we're significant, unique, and that kind of a thing. So we drive all points as big points. All little points become big points for us. And so I think we need to be willing, first and foremost, to be able to see that not everything is a critical issue, right? And so if somebody were to suggest something to you, well, be willing to acknowledge that if somebody doesn't like your favorite TV show, it doesn't mean that they hate you. It doesn't mean that they believe that your choice in television shows is awful and that you're a fuddy-duddy. That's not what's being communicated. But oftentimes we can take that and be like, what do you mean you don't like The Office? What's wrong with you? That's the type of response that sometimes we'll have toward people. And so we need to be willing to start parceling out in our own minds what's significant and what's insignificant. But then when we come to the place of what's significant, we need to be willing to look at other people and say, this is significant enough that if I believe it to be true, it does have a significant impact on that person's life, whether it's here, and for us as Christians, here or for forever.
So there's different levels of significance, right? There's a type of, hey, you shouldn't have done that significance, which is minor and one time.
Right.
There's a type of, this can't be a habit significance,
Yeah.
which is, hey, this, I see that you're raising your voice with your wife a lot.
Sure.
I yelled at my wife one time, I raise my voice at her often, or I verbally accost her frequently.
Sure.
Those are different levels, and they're going to require different, what you're doing is wrong. And
Right.
so sometimes patterns are helpful. If you're looking at a brother or sister, particularly in Christ, you spend time in the church, look for patterns before,
Right.
we don't want to be people who have a loaded gun ready to take aim with criticism.
Yeah.
And so you first say, hey, is this a pattern? At the same time, we don't want to be people who never confront.
Right.
Paul Tripp very helpfully says that usually Christians do big confrontations very poorly. Like when the marriage is breaking or there's a huge issue, we do big confrontations really badly because we never do small confrontations.
Sure.
Yep. And because we never do small confrontations, they are only big confrontations. And also because we never do small confrontations, we're not practiced enough when we do big confrontations. Right. And so there's this nature of, if I never say, Chris, I think actually that thing you did was unhelpful and you should reconsider how it affects other people. Or you never say, like you did this morning, I was going on my, here's everything, blah, blah, and you said, are you ready for some thoughts? And I know you're about to disagree with me. But we've been at this quite a while.
Sure.
I've maybe even brought this up 2 weeks ago. When Chris asks to pray for me, and there's the word humility is in that prayer, I'm like, all right, he's going to tell me why he thinks I'm wrong.
Sure.
But we've done this enough now, man, that I can handle it.
Sure.
Right? And we've done this enough that if there was something really wrong with one of us, we would have actually done the practice to say,
right.
brother, you know why I do this, right? And so there's a relationship there of, if we never confront small, if we never have the guts to say, hey, I've noticed a pattern and I'd like to talk to you about it, then we're never going to practice to be able to do the big things well. So a couple of maybe practical thoughts here. On an individual level, let's say you're around someone and they say something phony. They just say something goofy. And you're like, that's not right. I find that a helpful way...
Like the Kansas City Chiefs deserve to be in the Super Bowl.
That's goofy.
Yeah.
You know what you can do? Just say, I disagree.
Yeah.
And leave it there.
Yep.
You don't have to agree with something that you think is wrong. You can say, I disagree. And you can say it matter-of-factly, and if someone wants to know why you disagree, they can ask you.
Yep.
But once they've asked you, you're not attacking them.
Yep.
So there's a little bit of an interchange where you can take comfort in saying, I go down to a Presbyterian seminary, and the Presbyterian seminary that I'm at, 80% of the people there believe that you should baptize infants, and I disagree.
Yeah, tell them why they're wrong. Yeah.
So there's that. Just you're in a Bible study, you're talking to a Christian about who to vote for, or whatever. You can just say, I actually think that's wrong.
Yeah.
And then if someone invites further discourse, you can go from there.
Yeah.
I think we can also, Chris, seek to establish relationships that say biblical rebuke and correction is godly and helpful.
Yeah.
So go through a Proverbs Bible study. And as a group of men or a group of women, note all the times that Proverbs says that the kisses of an enemy are deadly, but the wounds of a friend are faithful.
Yep.
And agree together, we believe this. We believe the scriptures are right, that the wounds of a friend who loves you and has your good in mind are helpful.
Yeah, open rebuke is better, right?
Open rebuke is better than hidden love.
Yeah.
And so you agree on that before the confrontation, right? You've decided, hey, let's be a group of people that is willing to look at one another and say, I'm noticing a problem.
Right.
And if you can agree to that in a community before there's a problem, then there's a basis for when someone comes to you and says, brother, I love you, something's wrong here. I think those are two helpful things to think about with any other practical thoughts you have on the idea of engaging in a non-confrontationalism culture?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there's, I don't mean to sound kind of squishy with this, but like there is an element of trust that's involved in every human relationship of significance. And when you speak into somebody's life, I think you need to be thankful that there is enough trust that exists there for you to speak with somebody in a way that, gives you permission, as it were, on that person's part to actually speak that way to them. And so I think that can kind of...
Thankful with an A or thankful like thoughtful?
Thankful with an A, yeah.
I don't know if thankful is a word, but a time to
no,
think.
It is for us, yeah. We can have that word here. So, yeah, I mean, to be able to approach somebody and say, I am... To know that I have an ability and a trust on this person's part keeps me from becoming so conceited. Because, I've seen this happen before. I've seen individuals who've engaged in this type of behavior where they feel it is their responsibility to point out what is wrong with others and say, well, we're supposed to speak the truth with love, and I love you, and so therefore I'm going to speak the truth. It's like, well, you're missing the point. I mean, the whole point of, quote, speaking the truth in love is so that people grow. And that includes you.
Yeah,
and oftentimes some of the people that I've found that have been most eager to share their criticisms of other people tend to be those who are the most resistant and most defensive and most angry people to receive any type of feedback for themselves. And that's simply because they don't want to be wrong. And so they want to be right. They want to assert their rightness. And when you look at another person and say, man, to know that I have enough trust in this other person. I mean, the other day, Josh, you talked with me about me being late regularly. You know what? I trust you. And you trust me. And it's like, yeah, you have a space to speak into my life in a way where you can say those things, and I'm not going to fly off the handle over it because there's trust that exists. Yeah. And so I think one of the things that Christian people can do is we talk with non-Christian neighbors, friends, whatever. I mean, the truth doesn't need to be, it's not like the truth requires you to develop a relationship of trust with somebody. But most times when it comes to talking to a non-Christian person, it's because you have some type of a relationship with them that exists. And to be willing to say, like, you know what, you should live a life that is trust building enough with them that they know that if you're going to speak with them about something that does confront what they might do, believe, say, that kind of a thing, that they can know, all right, well, as offensive as this might seem to me, I can look at my track record with them and see they've been really loving with me. They've been really consistent with me. They've seemed to care about me. And I know when I work in the secular workforce, that's something I try to demonstrate to the people that I supervise. Like, you know what? I'm a Christian. Like these people know I was a Christian, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to really care about you. And if substantive conversations take place, secular workforce, you can't have same kind of conversations you have on the street, but substantive conversations take place. It's in part due to the fact that, I have a trust that, I'm not just a jerk when I'm coming to say something to you.
And part of that is face-to-face if possible, so you can see someone who, and I think hopefully you can tell confrontation here does not mean punching.
Right.
Confrontation simply is used in this idea that there is a tension or a disagreement, and you're presenting that you're confronting another person. And to your point about people who are overly critical, most of what was said up to this point is under the assumption that the person listening is non-confrontational. Right? It's like that you have the hesitancy to do this, which means you're probably not firing every bullet you got.
Exactly.
And yet we want to be able to calculatedly hit the target every once in a while. Maybe I want to end, Chris, with just the benefits of living a life where people can confront you, where you invite confrontation. Hard circumstance over the weekend, and my wife and I can kind of be almost confirmation biasy. We tend to think similarly a lot of things. So if something happens, we probably have a similar read on it, and so we can we can get really passionate in the same direction. And actually, my wife said, I was about to send a message, and my wife said, "Are you going to talk to the elders or Chris before you send that? Because the last few times you've wanted to do this, they corrected you and gave you a better idea." And I basically said, "Nah, probably not going to do that. I think I got a clear read on this one." And I'm thankful I didn't, because this morning I talked to you and you gave me a clearer read, and it wasn't just like I said, "Chris, what's your perspective?" I gave you what I thought, and you said very lovingly, "Are you ready for some thoughts?" And I guess I could have said no, but we have we have enough track record, as you've said, that I know that your thoughts are helpful.
Sure.
I know that they are in love, and so I asked for them, and they changed my perspective. And once
they changed your life.
They changed.
That's what you're saying. Yeah.
Can live my best life.
Life changers. That's what we're doing here.
So you did confront me, but it didn't seem like the thing that people think a confrontation is, where you came in with vitriol and red faced and you just shamed me and put me on my place. No, you simply said, "I don't think you're reading this totally. You should read it this way as well.
Consider some other angles." And
and I'm grateful for the ways in which we've done that over a number of years, because the confrontations get smaller.
Right.
And even funny enough, probably over the last 4 weeks, we've had 2 or 3 of them.
Oh, sure.
And nothing has changed. We're just like,
just
okay,
casual
yeah, you're
conversations.
probably right.
Yep.
and I think there's such a benefit in knowing that you have people that you trust that will tell you when they think you're wrong.
Yeah.
Because there's this security there. No, for one, next week, if you and I talk about something and you don't correct me, I'm like, okay, maybe I have a good read on this.
Right.
Because if I didn't, I know Chris would tell me, because he loves me.
Yep.
Right? And he loves me enough to not let me put my foot in my mouth over here or cause more trouble than I need to over here.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that is that relational trust component as well. So that's a direct attack, affront against non-confrontationalism.
An assault.
Just an encouragement to, sometimes you got to say that something's wrong when it's wrong.
Yeah.
And that can be a small thing, that can be a big thing, but just know that the momentum of the culture tells you to keep your mouth shut when you think something's wrong, and yet the gospel, Jesus' person himself, teaches us that we can lovingly disagree, lovingly say, "I think that's wrong." Yeah. And we can do that in a way that actually draws people and wins people to Christ. Yeah. So we hope that this was a helpful time to think, a thoughtful, careful engagement with issues in the culture and the church. Chris, I just remembered we were going to do a giveaway. So we have a couple.
Who wants a mop from my basement?
We have a couple. We have a couple of Yetis. So we got some extra ones. I think they're 2 small coffee cups and 1 large water thermos.
Yeah.
So that's 3. And then do we still have those 5 books in Stephen's Point?
Oh, what 5
evangelism
books were those?
books, How to Talk About Jesus Without Being That Guy. Do we have any of those
We've
left?
got a couple. We got a couple, yeah.
Let's say we got 3 of those. If not,
Sure.
we'll buy 3 more. So we got 6 things to give away. 3 of them are drinkware with the A Time to Think logo. 3 of them books we've referenced in past podcasts called How to Talk About Jesus Without Being That Guy, some evangelism tactics. Here's how we're going to give them away. We want people to give a rating and comment on the podcast. What's been helpful? We've told you we want it to be helpful. As pastors, I think the most encouraging thing I ever get is not, "You did a bang-up job today, Pastor Josh." It's, "Hey, that helped me see this."
Yeah. Yep.
Right? So we want to be a helpful podcast. So if you would leave a comment about what's been helpful.
Yeah.
And then we will take all the names of people who comment, throw them in a bag, draw names, and we'll give away some A Time to Think swag and some books.
Yeah, right.
And I finally said, we had that stuff for like 2 months, and I just kept forgetting to do.
But it's here now, and that's all that matters.
So there's the A Time to Think giveaway, and now is the A Time to Think getaway. Thanks for spending some time to think.